Cinderella, France, by the best-loved folktales of the world. Once upon a time there was a worthy man who married for his second wife the haughtiest, proudest woman that has ever been seen. She had 2 daughters who possessed their mother's temper and resembled her in everything. Her husband, on the other hand, had a young daughter who was exceptionally sweet and of gentle nature. She got this from her mother, who was the nicest person in the world. The wedding was no sooner over than the stepmother began to display her bad temper. She could not endure the excellent qualities of this young girl, for they made her own daughters appear more hateful than ever. She thrust upon her all the meanest tasks about the house. It was her who had to clean the plates and the stairs and sweep out the rooms of the mistress of the house and her daughters. She slept on a wretched mattress in a garret at the top of the house, while the sisters had rooms with nice flooring and beds of the most fashionable style, with mirrors in which they could see themselves from head to toe. The poor girl endured everything patiently, not daring to complain to her father. The latter would have scolded her, because he was entirely ruled by his wife. When she had finished her work, she used to sit among the cinders in the corner of the chimney, and it was from this habit that she came to be commonly known as Cinderclad. The younger of the 2 sisters, who was not quite spiteful as the elder, called her Cinderella. But her wretched clothes did not prevent Cinderella from being 100 times more beautiful than her sisters, with all their repleasant garments. It happened that the king's son gave a ball, and he invited all persons of high degree. The 2 young ladies were invited among others, for they cut a considerable figure in the country. Not a little pleased were they, and they questioned of what clothes they would wear, and how would they do their hair, and it would take up all their time. And all this meant fresh trouble for Cinderella, for it was her who went over her sisters' linen and ironed their ruffles. They could talk of nothing else but the fashions in clothes. For my part, said the elder, I shall wear a dress of red velvet with Honiton lace. I have only everyday petticoat, said the younger, but to make up for it I shall wear my cloak with the golden flowers and my necklace of diamonds, which are not so bad. They sent for a good hairdresser to arrange their double-frilled caps, and bought patches at the top shop. They summoned Cinderella and asked her for advice, for she had a good taste. Cinderella gave them the best possible suggestions, and even offered to dress their hair, to which they gladly agreed. While she was there occupied, they said, Cinderella, would you not like to go to the ball? Ah, but you fine ladies are laughing at me. It would be no place for me. That is very true. People would laugh to see a Cinderclad in the ballroom. Anyone else but Cinderella would have done their hair a mess. But she was a good nature, and she finished them off to perfection. They were so excited in their glee that for nearly 2 days they ate nothing. They broke more than a dozen laces through drawing their stays tight in order to make their waists look slender, and they were always in front of the mirror. At last the happy day arrived, and they went away, Cinderella watching them as long as she could, and keep them in sight. When she could no longer see them, she began to cry, and her godmother popped up, and she asked what was troubling her. I should like, she was crying so bitterly that she could not finish a sentence. Said her godmother, who was a fairy, you would like to go to the ball, would you not? Ah, yes, said Cinderella, sighing. Well, well, said the godmother, promise to be a good girl, and I will arrange this for you. She took Cinderella into her room and said, go into the garden and get me a pumpkin. Cinderella went at once and gathered the finest pumpkin that she could find. This she brought to her godmother, wondering how Pumpkin could be taking her to a ball. Her godmother scooped it up, and when only the rind was left, struck it with her wand. Instantly the pumpkin was changed into a beautiful coach. Then she went and looked in the mousetrap, where she found 6 mice alive. She told Cinderella to lift the door of the mousetrap a little, and as each mouse came out, she gave it a tap with her wand, whereupon it transformed into a fine horse, so that here was a fine team of 6 mouse-gray horses. But she was puzzled to know how to provide a coachman. I will go and see, said Cinderella. If there's not a rat in a rat trap, we can make a coachman of him." "Quite right," she said of her godmother. "Go and see." Cinderella brought in the rat trap, which contained 3 big rats. The fairy would choose one specifically, on account of his elegant whiskers. As soon as she had touched him, he turned into a fat coachman with the finest mustache you had ever seen. "Now go into the garden and bring me 6 lizards, which you will find behind the water butt." No sooner than she had been brought, the godmother turned them into 6 lackeys, who at once climbed up behind the coach in their braided liveries, and hung up there if they had done nothing else their whole lives. "Then," said the fairy godmother, "well, there you have it. You have all the means of going to the ball. Are you satisfied?" "Oh yes, but I'm going to go like this in my ugly clothes." Instantly her clothes were changed into garments of gold and silver cloth, beckoned with jewels. After her godmother had given her a pair of glass slippers, the prettiest in the world. Thus altered, she entered the coach. Her godmother bade her not to stay beyond midnight, whatever happened, warning her that if she had remained at the ball a moment longer, her coach would then again be a pumpkin, her horses would be mice, her lackeys would be lizards, while her old clothes would appear on her once more. She promised her godmother and said that she would not fail to leave the ball before midnight. The king's son, when he was told of the arrival of a great princess who nobody knew, went forth to receive her. He handed her down from the coachman and led her into the hall where the company was assembled. At once there fell great silence. The dancers stopped, and the violins played no more. Everyone's attention was on the beauty and the unknown guest. Everyone could be heard in confused whispers. "Oh, how beautiful she is!" The king's old man as he was, could not take his eyes off her, and whispered to the queen that it was many a long day since he had seen anyone so beautiful and charming. All the ladies were eager to scrutinize her clothing and the dressing of her hair, being determined to copy them on the morrow, provided they could find material so fine and tailors so clever. The king's son placed her in the seat of honor, and at once begged for the privilege of being her partner in dance. Such was this, with the grace which she had danced, that all admired her. A magnificent supper was served, but the young prince could not eat because he was so taken with watching her. She went and sat beside her sisters and bestowed numberless attentions upon them. She made them share with her the oranges and the lemons which the king had given her, greatly to their astonishment, for they did not recognize her. While they were talking, Cinderella heard the clock strike 11:45. She at once made a profound courtesy to the company and departed as quickly as she could. As soon as she was home again, she sought out her godmother, and having thanked her, declared that she wished to go upon the morrow once more to the ball, because the king's son had invited her. While she was busy telling her godmother all that happened at the ball, the 2 sisters came in knocking at the door. Cinderella let them in. "What a long time have you been in coming," she declared, rubbing her eyes and stretching herself as if she had just awakened. In the real truth, she had not for a moment wished to sleep since they had left. "If you had been at the ball," she said, one of the sisters, "you would not have been feeling weary. There came the most beautiful princess who has ever been seen." Cinderella was overjoyed. She asked them for the name of the princess, but they replied that no one knew it, and that the king's son was so distressed that he would give anything in the world to know who she was. Cinderella smiled and said she must have been beautiful indeed. "Oh, how lucky you are! Could I not have managed to see her? Oh, please, lend me the yellow dress you wear every day." "Indeed," said Jovenette, "this is a fine idea. Lend my dress to a grubby cinder clod like you? You must think I'm mad." Cinderella had expected this refusal. She was in no way upset, for she would have been greatly embarrassed had her sister been willing to lend her the dress. The next day the 2 sisters went to the ball, and so did Cinderella, even more splendidly attired than the first time. The king's son was always at her elbow and paid her endless compliments. The young girl enjoyed herself so much that she forgot about her godmother's bidding completely, and when the first stroke of midnight fell upon her ears, she thought it was no more than 11 o'clock. She rose and fled as nimbly as fawn. The prince followed her, but could not catch her. She let fall one of her glass slippers, however, and this prince picked up the tender care. When Cinderella reached home, she was not out of breath, without coach, without lackey, and in her shabby clothes. Nothing remained of all her splendid clothes, save one of the slippers. The fellow to the one which she let fall. Inquiries were made about the palace doorkeepers whether they had seen a princess go out, but they declared they had seen no one leave except a young girl, very ill-clad, who looked more like a peasant than a young lady. When her two sisters returned to the ball, Cinderella had asked them again if they enjoyed themselves, and the beautiful lady had been there. They told her that she was present, but she had fled once midnight sounded, and in such a haste that she had let one of her shoes fall, one of the glass slippers fall. The prettiest thing in the world, they added to the king's son, who picked it up, had done nothing but gaze at it for the rest of the night, from which it was plain that he was so deeply in love with this beautiful owner. They spoke the truth. A few days later, the king's son caused a proclamation to be made that he would take for wife the owner of the foot which the slipper would fit. They tried it first on the princess, then on the duchess, and then the whole court, but in vain. Presently, they brought it to the house of the two sisters, who did all they could to squeeze a foot into the slipper. This, however, they could not manage. Cinderella was looking on and recognized her slipper. "Let me see," she cried laughingly, "if it will not fit me." Her sisters burst out laughing and began to gibe at her. But she tried on the slipper, and she was very beautiful, and a quite fair one, and his orders were to try on the slipper on every maid. He told Cinderella to sit down, and putting on one of the slippers on the foot, he perceived that the latter slid in without trouble and was molded to its shape like wax. Great was the astonishment of the two sisters at this, and greater when Cinderella drew her pocket with the other slipper. This likewise drew on. At that very moment her godmother appeared at the scene. She gave a tap with her wand, and Cinderella's clothes transformed into the dress even more magnificent than her previous one. The two sisters recognized her for the beautiful person whom they had seen at the ball, and threw themselves at her feet, begging her pardon for all the ill treatment that they had suffered at their hands. Cinderella raised them, and declared as she embraced them that she had pardoned them with all her heart, bade them to love her well in the future. She was taken to the palace of the young prince, and in her new array she found her more beautiful than ever, and was married to her a few days afterward. Cinderella was as good as she was beautiful. She set aside apartments in the palace for her two sisters, and married them off that same day to two gentlemen of high rank about the court.